We are now going to look into the factors called as the state of infrastructure in India. They used to walk long distances to fetch fuel and water for the basic living altogether. We know that we hate comparison when India has been compared to countries like China or Indonesia or Vietnam. We would see that the development of technology assisted infrastructure. Good morning and welcome to the second session of Chapter 8, Infrastructure. In the last chapter, we were discussing about the need and the importance of infrastructure. Now, in this session, we are going to talk about the relevance in terms of the state of infrastructure in India. So, quickly moving forward, we are now going to look into the factors called as the state of infrastructure in India. Traditionally, the government has been solely responsible for developing the country's infrastructure. No doubt about the statement. Why? Because whenever you see a bad road, or whenever you see a pothole, or whenever you see that some dam is not working, or something which is not in a proper condition, we blame the government. We feel that infrastructure, the only right remains with the government. If the government has not taken any initiative, if the government has not developed a new railway track or not developed a new airport, we feel it's a government's mistake. So somewhere down the lane, we always blame the government for infrastructure. So that's where the mentality, the mindset was completely lying. Now, it was found that government's investment in infrastructure was inadequate. Government solely cannot be able to be responsible. They cannot completely develop the infrastructure. They cannot allocate all the funds only on infrastructure and leave the other sectors out of picture. So somewhere the money that was invested by the government was not enough in terms of developing the infrastructure. So that is why we brought in the private sector in joint hands with the public sector and we started developing the infrastructure. Now, going back to the success stories of Delhi Metro or Bengaluru Metro or the airports that have been developed in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, all these kind of airports and the roadways, metro services are all a joint venture of public and private. Now, why did we bring in this concept altogether? We felt that somewhere down the line, somewhere down the road, the private needs to be a part of this great initiative. The private sector has enough money which could be invested in the infrastructure and we could jointly develop lot of infrastructural facilities. So that is why the government invited the private people to become a part of this system altogether. Now, moving forward, a majority of our people live in rural areas. We know that about 70% of India still resides in the rural sector. Despite so much technical progress in the world, rural side or the rural women are still using biofuels such as crop residues and all those factors or wood to meet their energy requirements. If you understand the statement, until the year 2015-16, where we introduced the Ujjwala scheme altogether, providing gas facility to every single household, until then, most of our rural sector was suffering a lot because they did not have proper energy fuel to run the house. So the requirements of energy was very, very low. They were not able to run with modern systems. They used to use wood fire. They used to burn the crops. A lot of kind of things was happening which was actually disturbing the environment and causing pollution. They used to walk long distances to fetch fuel and water for the basic living altogether. That was quite a sad thing to be talked about. Why? Because our rural women had to suffer because of the lack of facilities. But in the present scenario, we have improved a lot. We have given up the basic facilities to all the people. So India has made a rapid progress in terms of infrastructure. The census in 2001, almost 20 years back, shows that the rural India has only 56% of households have electricity connection and 43% still use kerosene. Now, that is an old statistic, but yet that statistics is important for us to understand. Why? Because 56% of people alone having electricity and the remaining 43 or 44% still remaining in the dark is quite worrisome. So what we wanted to do here is that after the year 2014 onwards, we started concentrating on bringing electricity to the rural area altogether. By 2019, we have now been able to connect to almost more than 1.5 lakh villages across India where electricity has been brought in as a reform function altogether. So we were trying to understand and develop the basic facilities that are needed for the development of our country, starting from the LPG gas connection, from electricity, and from every other sector. We believe that we wanted to take it as a new challenge, and that's how we wanted to bring in infrastructural growth and promotion altogether. Now, moving forward, we also wanted to understand this factor very, very clearly, that about 90% of the rural household use biofuels for cooking. That's quite true. And that's why the tap water availability is limited only to 24% of the rural household. So water is also becoming a very, very important concern for many of us. The reason is that if you start understanding the concept of borewell and water availability schemes, many of the people in rural area are not able to get it. And that's one of the reasons why you see that people had to tap upon a lot of other factors to bring in water. 76% of population drink water from open sources such as wells, tanks, ponds, lakes, rivers, which also leads to ill health conditions. So that's one of the reasons where India stretched upon the factor that they wanted to have the Swachh Bharat, they wanted to have a clean and a green life altogether. So sanitation was given importance as a part of the infrastructure drive. Next, another study conducted by the National Sample Survey Organization in the year 1996, 24 years old statistic, but then it's very, very important. Why? Because you will understand that improved sanitation was available only to 6%. So 24 years back, India was only able to provide a 6% access to the people in the rural sector. But today, that 6% has got and converted to more than 35% across. So what we have been able to do is a rapid progress in the last few years. So what we need to understand here is that the rural sector really needs to do a lot of progress in terms of the infrastructure building. That's where we want the private players to come and adopt those villages and start giving them better infrastructure facilities so that the quality of life and living for the people can improve to greater heights. Moving forward, though it is widely understood that infrastructure is the foundation of development in India, we are yet to wake up to the call. India is investing 5% of its GDP. I'm talking about 15 years back. Today, we are investing quite close to 12% in terms of infrastructure, which is far below when compared to Indonesia and China. We know that we hate comparison when India has been compared to countries like China or Indonesia or Vietnam, but the fact remains true. Why? Because comparatively, if you start seeing here, we are spending lesser amount of money on infrastructure, which needs to be heightened up so that we will be able to get a better quality of life. Some of the economists have also projected that India will become the third biggest economy. Whatever they predicted has become true today. 20 years back, when they predicted that in 2020, India will definitely overtake some of the large countries in the world, the answer is yes. Today, we are the third largest economy in the world by far, by size and production. And with that, India will also happen to boost up their infrastructure, which we have been doing. So as the income rises, as the investment rises, infrastructure also needs to go up. So that is where the country will also start developing. For the low income countries, in basic infrastructures like irrigation, transport, and power are more important. But for a higher income country like India, we are focusing on the advanced infrastructure, on an alternative energy channel, on automation and other kind of facilities which can make this country even more attractive for the FDI, for the foreign direct investment to come inside. Now, moving forward, as economies start maturing, so as the country starts developing, as it starts going up, most of the basic consumption demands are met. When I'm talking about the food, shelter and clothing part, what happens now is that the share of agriculture in the economy shrinks and more service related infrastructure is required. This is absolutely true. Why? Because today when you look at those big cities, what is happening is that people are more concentrating on metro, people are more concentrating on internet connectivity, on mobility, on space, work from home, all those factors which is actually moving towards a service related infrastructure rather than to the agriculture. So we would see that the development of technology assisted infrastructure to a larger extent, and that is why the share of power and telecommunication infrastructure is definitely going to play a pivotal role in the higher income countries altogether. Now, the development of infrastructure and economic development go hand in hand. So it is very, very important when you stress upon the factor infrastructure development coupled with power, with telecommunication, with all those factors are a direct incentives for the economic development of our country. It cannot be separated and seen. They go hand in hand, and that is how the development of a country can be actually measured. Now, moving forward, we also see that agriculture depends to a consideration in terms of the expansion of the irrigation facilities, which is quite true, and it has to happen in India. Industrial progress depends on the development of power and electricity. These two sectors we are going to talk again and again because power and electricity are going to remain the key factors here. And obviously, if proper attention is not paid to the development of infrastructure, if we are not going to give attention to power and electricity altogether, then there might not be a good development happening. So there might be an inadequate shutdown altogether, and that might lead to an adverse effect in the development. So in this chapter, the focus will be only on two kinds. The one which we are going to talk associated with energy, and the other that is going to be on health. So we are going to concern only, again, as I told, the economic part and the social part. So at any given point of time, our objective, our focus is to make India energy self-reliant and healthcare self-reliant. Until and unless these two objectives are completely fulfilled and they have been taken with a top priority, we will not be probably able to make a grand progress altogether. So in the coming years, the investment will be onto the areas of energy sector and healthcare sector, and we will try to make the sector as good as possible. With this, I come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that this session was highly useful, informative, and educative for you. In the next session, we will talk about the different forms of infrastructure. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today.